Good morning, YouTube. Well, it's gonna be a little different. I just uh, I just finished this book yesterday. So I read T.S. Madison's book, "A Light Through the Shade." It's an autobiographical book. It's basically a memoir. It's written by Jasmine P. Rain. So I read it yesterday, and I read it straight through. That is the I'm a writer myself. That is the greatest compliment you can pay any writer. When you tell them that you read it at one time, you read it all the way through, from cover to cover. So it means you can't put it down. So it's a good story. Okay, of course you guys know who T.S. Madison is. Uh, I I just became aware of her in the last few months or so. I find her an interesting character. So I said, "Oh, she wrote a book. Let me check it out." And so this is a memoir. It's basically an interview. The writer, who is Jasmine P. Rain, is interviewing T.S. Madison. So it's T.S. Madison's story, written by I'm kind of off. Excuse me, Jasmine P. Rain. Okay, so Jasmine's written a couple of other books. She approached her, and they went on this adventure. So I just identify with the story so much. I mean, I'm not a trans person myself, but my past, I was a drug dealer, and so a huge part of my I should say my clientele were trans women, prostitutes. We lived in the same building, and those were the hustlers. So I got familiar with several of the stories. And I had a very dear friend who I just wish could have been like T.S. Madison. I mean, who could have made it through to tell these stories. Okay, so Madison starts out telling us who she is, where she came from. I thought it was interesting. I've never heard of a 3-year-old getting an erection, although I do remember there was already activity with myself at about 8, so it's not that far of a stretch. But she has a memory all the way back to 3. So she starts at around 3 years old, and her first erection. This is a pretty erotic type book, but she seemed to have a knowledge of sexuality, of not only just the sexuality of a trans person, but sexuality of lots of men, lots of her clients, lots of her customers. So she takes us through a lot of that, a lot of self discovery of when she began dressing as a woman. So those kind of things. Some of the people who taught her the ropes. I think she had a drag mother in there, and I've just found it very interesting. Nothing quite like telling your memoir. I mean, not everyone's a writer, but we all have a story. Let me say that. It would sound kind of sexy. Let me try it again. Not everyone's a writer, but we all have a story, and this is her opportunity to tell the whole story. Fascinating. So now, this book it's a couple years old. Came out 2015. I just want to get so I have some context here. He starts off with who is T.S. Madison, then Miami Subs. So in Miami Subs, first chapter, second chapter, she goes on and tells us all about tricking and some of the experiences. What I like about it is the story is she's unapologetic about who she is and where she's been and what she's done. This is not a girl who's also about the past, like with shame. She's able to tell the story. People like me who are on drugs, a lot of times we are afraid to go too far into our past because we don't want it to sound too good, and we are afraid of repeating old behaviors. So you can really delve in and dig in and realize that there were some fun times there too. There was good times. If it wasn't no good times, then you wouldn't have did it. She talks about what it's like to have to survive with so much prejudice against you, and how many times that is the reality. Is not the preferred reality, but that's just the way it is. A lot of times, girls are unemployable, or that people won't give them a chance to work, make legitimate money. So a lot of the first money they get is through prostitution. Now ask yourself, where are the tricks coming from? Oh, Because if everybody's making a living that way, there must be a lot more going on than we were willing to acknowledge. So the first part of the book goes on. She tells us about coming up, coming out, first sexual encounters, things like that, and then she drifts into the street life in there in Miami. So she gives us a couple of stories of when it was good, several stories of when it was bad. She's spitting it out. I mean, I know when I was listed in this hotel, the New Pacific. Most of the girls were working girls. Most of them were trans girls, but and they had this this hardness about them, which I used to question about often. I would say, "Excuse me, to Miss Tiffany, why do you have an electric chainsaw under your bed?" And she would tell me all the stories. Whenever the tricks don't want to pay, they want to be, I want to call themselves being robbers, or they want to do something shady. She whip out that electric chainsaw. When she cranked it up, everybody started moving. She says, fail proof. So there's reasons why she was that way. I love Miss Tiffany, but there are reasons why. Yes, she was hard. She had a hard core, but some of these things, and that Madison goes into here, will make you hard. So there is a hard edge. When your life is threatened, you learn how to fight, and you learn that sometimes it's fighting for your very life. So I identify with a lot of that just from the streets. It's similar to, well, whatever. I want to just keep this on on T.S. Madison, not me. So okay, so she went into the Miami sub. This is where she started hooking at and whoring at. I'll give you one complaint I have about this book. I want to know. I wanted to know more about how she ended up in this marvelous chateau. This is this huge house with all these fabulous antiques, and it looks like a real queen lives there. I would love to know more about that, but that wasn't the point of the story. And I'm sure she's at the end. She said she's going to write more, so maybe we'll get a little glimpse into that. How we can improve our conditions. But so the sub, then she go from the drive-through to the sidewalk. Okay, then she talks a little bit about when as a young trans person, some of the difficulties she was having working at the drive-through. People, not everybody's nice, not everybody's sweet, and they made it so hard for her to have a square job that she was almost forced into the streets, where she could control her own destiny, have her own life. So it explains a lot of that, and a lot of that is true. Fortunately, here in San Francisco, there are a lot of trans girls who work, they have lots of laws, protection type laws here, but I can't imagine what that would be like in some places like Miami, anywhere really outside of California, New York City, where the girls have very many opportunities, and even here, it's only certain kind of places that are going to have you. I mean, obviously, if you look like a woman, if you are passed as a woman, then it's not going to be an issue for you. But not everybody is at that point, so it can be hard, and many times that's why they end up on the streets. Okay, so let me just go some of these chapters. From the drive through to the sidewalk, she talks about the sidewalk. Okay, next one's called the hoe. Chapter 4 is the hoe. All right, so that's stories about getting money. I'm trying to remember. There's stories about how she got along in her neighborhoods, and how many times she get along with the gangsters. They respected her more so than uh, customers, clients. How many times in the streets, you can people have respect for you, and I think she doesn't. Maybe she's not even aware of it at this point, but a lot of it is just because you're based on your personality. She's obviously funny. She's loyal. She has just character defects that make her a likable person, and they take a liking to her. And a lot of times she was protected by some of the people in the streets, some of the straight people in the streets. Getting along with gangsters in the streets, it's all about the money, right? But as long as you're willing to respect people, there are many people who, when a man has no qualms about his own sexual identity, they do not give a damn about what you're doing in your bedroom. That is not that's what my observation is. They just don't care. If they don't have no insecurity about who they are, they're not concerned about who you are. So when you being hateful to people, trans people, other people different than you, that means there's something going on the inside of you. We all know the stories about how these bullies. You find out later on when you get out of school that they were the very ones that were gay. So there's a lot of wisdom in this story, and she takes us through some of. Not all tricks were bad people. Just one of her best friends was a person she tricked with first, and became friends through the years. Who admired her, who just into trans women. That was his thing. I'll tell you honestly, I used to be jealous of some of the girls because I was a gay boy. In these hotels, I had a huge dope sack, and these girls, I would see these tricks coming over to see these girls and paying them. I'm looking at them saying, "Bitch, I did it for free. What the fuck are you?" Miss Tiffany would just throw it in my face. Oh, that one just gave me. Although I'm pretty sure she was lying. Oh, that one just gave me 600. Oh, that one just gave me this. And that one just gave me. Oh, I made 1,000 last night on that one, and a lot of bullshit there, exaggerations, but they were still coming. These girls were hustlers, and they made their money, and it always irritated me. But the thing is, the people, the tricks, they didn't want a dude, they didn't want a gay boy, and they didn't want a woman. They were women. There were prostitutes in that building. They didn't want a woman, and they didn't want a dude. They wanted a trans woman. That is. They ain't gonna pay me shit. So anyway, so the chapter 4 is called the hoe. It's a stroll. The hoe stroll. Okay, it didn't call it the hoe. It's called the hoe stroll. She tells us about that. Okay, Orange Blossom Trail. The Orange Blossom Trail. Okay, Orange Blossom Trail. So she's talking about getting to Atlanta. I assume Orange Blossom would be orange. No, orange. Atlanta is the peaches. Orange Blossom would still be Miami. So she lived a lot of her young life. T.S. Madison is not very old. She's in her 30s. So she lived a lot of her 20s, uh, her teens and 20s in Miami. Okay, so then she goes on to the story in chapter 6 about this guy named Jeff who befriended her and was always a friend of hers and still a friend of hers. You'll meet people like that in your life, friends, people who cared about you and loved you. So she gives him his props, which was I thought it was a nice story. She didn't go on here about a love interest, so I don't know if Madison's ever been really in a loving relationship or not. Uh, this guy Jeff might have come close if things would have been worked out a little differently. So next thing, images of a queen. So she gives us a lot of photos. This photo shoot, this photo shoot is very creative. In fact, the cover of the book you'll see that she's dolled up like Queen Elizabeth or somebody, and the writer is like describing. It's very nice. It's a nice cover, and then there are pictures in the middle of there of her being the queen. So she has color photos. That must have been expensive to put in there. Putting color photos in a book is hard, especially in ebook. That makes it expensive. So anyway, okay. Dope boys in the trap. Okay. So the dope boys, that would be. She lived near. I'm just gonna give you some a little bit, a little highlights here. This is not the part of the story that really captured my and held my interest like that. I'm much more interested in T.S. Madison's spiritual life. That's what draws me. So kind of moving through street life. Although I respect that she's able to just tell it like it was, without demonizing her past or making it something nastier than it was or better than it was. It's just what it was. Okay, so the dope boys. At one point, she lived in a house where there was a dope house next door. So, from what I understand, they sold primarily weed, but also powder. I guess this is before crack. And her relationship with these boys, how people would come to terrorize her, even police come to terrorize her in her house, and these boys would step in. because they respected her, and she was their friend. So it's about getting, you know, I don't know about being in neighborhoods where people who are different, like being a trans person in the hood, in the neighborhoods, how that is. I did my thing in San Francisco in the streets of Hollywood, so I was with other people who live a very similar type of lifestyle. That's what I'm saying. So that was very very interesting for me. Some of the abuses she took from cops, uh, and people who did not honor who she was. I was amazed at how people felt like they could murder a trans person and walk away from it. Now, usually, when you think about killing somebody, there's thought in there. There's a relationship, there's your wife or your husband. There's some reason to kill a person. But many times these girls were faced with people just killing out of pure hatred. So it explains a lot why there's always that kind of a hard edge to people who have been in the life for a very long time. Although I've known girls who have been very docile and very gentle as well. So we're not all monolithic, and they're not either. Okay, those boys, they got to the black church. Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting for me. Okay, so Madison talks. If you guys watch her videos, I guess if you watch this one, you'll probably be watching hers also. But she talks a lot about her relationship with God, her spiritual relationship. Now, and here she's able to explain a little of where she's coming from. Okay, as a Christian, and I'm a Christian myself. As a Christian, there's this desire to communicate to other people your experience. In other words, how your life can change, how you could not be on the streets, how you could not be on dope, how you could be delivered from sex X, X, and X, and X, and X, and some of these things that most likely you cannot be delivered from. So there's the ongoing desire to communicate that. And sometimes it's hard to communicate that come from a non-religious place. So I think she does a good job of this. And I think that Madison will be much more of a help in bringing people to faith, to Christ, using her method than a lot of this religious church stuff. I honestly, truly believe that. Because, like, for instance, for me, excuse me, having a hard time. Like for me, coming from where I was coming from, I needed people who were very similar to me, who I saw a change in their life in order for me to be able to be even willing to even listen to what they had to say, because the church always presented itself as my enemy. And there's no way I can get from there with no faith at all to where I'm at now, who I consider myself to have strong faith, using the intermediary of some preacher somewhere who seemed to be stuck on this book. A lot of times, people who are different, who are trying to explain their faith, it almost seems like we're speaking against religion. And let me tell you something. It is the truth. Because religion's not gonna work. Not the kind of traditional religion that heterosexual people use. That's just not gonna work. So what I think comes through with this thing is, with no religion, with no religion at all, you still can have a personal relationship with God. Now, I know this to be an absolute truth. I'll give you the example. When I go every Friday, I go to this place in the Castro. It's for people who are recovering from drugs and alcohol. They are 98% people in 12-step programs, recovery programs. I'm not a part of that program. God has just delivered me, and my life has just changed without programs. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for that program. That's why I give them my time. I've been doing that for 12, 13 years. And here's the thing. Because this guy, Bill Wilson, the one who started the 12-step program, he figured out these 12 steps. What are 12 steps for? 12 steps to a spiritual life. That's basically what it comes down to. Without Jesus, without the Bible, without going to church, they figured out a way that you can use these 12 steps to have some relationship to God without religion. There are people in there, Christians in 12 steps. I'm not saying that. But the majority, a lot of people are praying, still praying to what they say when you go in there, you can pray to a doorknob and be delivered from the actual. I mean, their belief is you're always a drug addict, but you can, if you can get as far as acknowledging a power greater than yourself, you can get a handle on this drug thing. You can stop using. And I know there are people in there with 15, 20, 30 years of sobriety, completely changed lifestyle. They're no longer thieves. They're no longer whores. They're no longer liars. All the things that we strive for and we claim that only God can do, they have all these things without any Bible at all. They have their big book, Spiritual Principles. My point is, you can have a relationship with God, the relationship with God, not the relationship with the Bible. Now, in all fairness, so I'm not a hater. I mean, in all fairness, the Bible been around a lot longer than 12-step programs, and it's helped probably a lot more people. But the church, the church is built around the Bible. So when you go into to a traditional Christian church, their job is really just to preach the Bible. So I can see where they get their confusion from. You're trying to take ancient books, ancient things that were written thousands and thousands and thousands of years ago, and you're trying to turn that into something that is relevant today. It's a job, but that is their job, to preach the Bible. So they should change the name of the church. That is misleading. This is the church. Well, are you a Bible believing? I don't know how that works. I just know that I don't live my life based on the Bible. I live my life based on God, my relationship with God. But I had to have the Bible in order to teach me who Jesus Christ was, and then because I couldn't just go I just believe in God. It's not just a decision like that. You see what I'm saying? But now, as far as going back to that book and over that book and over that book and over that, making that book God, I'm not there. And this is what I get from this girl also. We are forced in that position because our sexuality is not going to make sense reading it from Leviticus. But everything's not explained in Leviticus. And I think the primary reason that everything is not explained in Leviticus is because you're calling this the Word of God. If you just get past that, if you just could accept it for what it is, the stories, the songs, the things that happened to these people, if you could just accept it for what it was, it wouldn't be a problem with me at all. But when you start saying that this is the Word of God, like God took somebody's hand and just took their hand and started moving it around on the page, that's foolishness to me. That's why it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense because you're saying it's the Word of God. Because, I mean, there are things that you should know right from wrong. People who are stuck in a book like that, they don't know right from wrong. All they know is what the book says. That's why they're able to treat people the horrible way they do. I mean, the church is guilty of child abuse because, frankly, people my age, we don't give a damn about what you're talking about. I mean, we're mature human beings, but these young people, those are the ones you try to have an effect on. You're destroying, messing, getting them more confused and things like that. You're abusing those kids, so it's child abuse. Not necessarily totally the people. Lord, I done went off into a tangent. Lord, I can't say, Lord, Timothy, focus up. T.S. Madison, I'm trying to review your book, not mine. Okay, so anyway, I strongly recommend this book. She goes into a lot of, the last chapter is about a relationship with church, the Bible, and how she's able to navigate those things and be a spiritual person she is now. And believe she is a spiritual person. To know him for yourself. That is it. Knowing for yourself. What is knowing for yourself? Good morning, God. How you doing? Let's do it again. That's it, baby. Except that you're in relationship with God. And all this other stuff is just stuff we use to try to understand how we feel. I know there's power. God has power to do things and change things in your life, but you have to believe. And so how do you get there to believe? 12 steps. They can get there to believe with those 12 steps. I needed the Christ. I needed the Bible, but I do not need to study it and turn it into an idol. And so this was a good read. It's wonderful. I love that it ended up on that, on her spiritual life, how she navigates it. It's a wonderful story. So good work, T.S. Madison. I'm only here to recommend your book. Love writing. And also for the lady, I got to go keep going back because I'm half retarded. Let me go. The lady who wrote the book, Jasmine P. Rain. I think she's the one that wrote Happy Head. I think she wrote Happy Head too. So she's an erotic writer. Good job, people. I really appreciate it. And I read it in one day. So that means I stayed engaged the whole time. Okay, go buy T.S. Madison's book. It's been out about 2 years. So I got it from Amazon. And it's also available on Kindle. So you can get it at a reasonable price. All right. Maybe I'll be back later. We'll see.